Praises to Yahweh and Yahushua. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to my channel, Israel and Grafted in Israel. And this is my first video, and I will be discussing ancient Hebrew script versus modern. Are those who say they are Jews a people of pure speech? I have been looking at learning Hebrew for a number of years. I actually got some cards, Ashkenazi Hebrew cards. I just would always kind of look at them and put them away. But now I've been really curious to learn the language and understand the symbols because there's a lot of correlations with Jamaican patois, which I can speak. So I looked at a chart which compares and contrasts the ancient Hebrew pictographs through the Phoenician all the way through to the modern Hebrew, which is coming from the Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews, the modern Hebrew. And I'm by no means an expert on the subject, but I spent my Sabbath looking at the script's symbols, pronunciations, stated meanings, and arrived at some interesting observations. I think it provides some basis to challenge the authenticity of the current Jewish interpretations of the language. And it kind of caused me to wonder if they are, as Zephaniah 3:9 says, a people of pure speech in terms of their interpretation and pronunciation of the language. But it also shows you how far we as human beings have fallen away from our original state and speech. So ancient Hebrew is the original human language before it was confounded, and it derives through Hebrew, who did not build the Tower of Babel. He's 6 generations from Abraham, and it is strikingly different, almost completely in opposition to the current Hebrew of today that is spoken and written in Israel. And it's different not only in terms of the meanings communicated by the visual symbol, but also in its pronunciation and the meanings determined. And so just to lay the groundwork, I wanted you to hear a discussion on the correct pronunciation of the letters from some of the Hebrew Israelite ministries out there as they study it. Now, I don't agree with their doctrine entirely, only parts of it. I believe Gentiles, Ham and Japheth, are grafted into Israel because that is the good character of Yah. He is generous and gracious. And of course, we know that Job was a descendant of Esau, and he was one of the best men God found on earth. But regardless, I think this is a good teaching on the language. And from there, we can then go into the differences and the evolution of the letters simply on the face of my first learning them and looking at them. So all of this is in service of providing a basis for revealing how far the people saying they are Jews might actually be from being the original people of Yah.
So let me run through the full ancient Hebrew alphabet. A, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha, Wa, Za, Cha, Ta, Ya, Ka, La, Ma, Na, Sa, I, Pa, Taza, Kwa, Ra, Sha, Tha. Now the consonant or letter that I want to focus on is the I. This is the only letter that sounds different from the others. An example of the letter I would be the word Shema, which means hear or listen. Deuteronomy 6:4 says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord." All right, back to the topic. Now, a lot of times when I tell people that the original Hebrew alphabet is A, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha, so forth and so on, they laugh. And they say, "Brother, that's not real. No language don't sound like that." Okay, let me show you something. This is a language called Sanskrit, and these are the consonants of that language. Now, I'm going to let the guy say it for you. I'm not going to play them all because they all sound the same, but listen to this.
Ka, Ga, Da, Ha,
So here's another old language based off the ah sound. And if you're an Israelite, you know that all languages come from the original language, Hebrew. So it's not a big stretch to believe that the original Hebrew alphabet was indeed ah, ba, ga, da, ha, etc., etc. Now, as I said earlier, the only exception to this rule is the sound ah. Is the Hebrew alphabet. Now, in modern Hebrew, this would be Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, so forth and so on. But that is not ancient. In the ancient Hebrew, it would be Ah, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha, so forth and so on. Now again, many people will say, that's not real, that's made up. Okay, but watch this. This is from a website called HebrewForChristians.com. The website address is in the top right-hand corner. This is the actual page, but I added the blue borders just to make it look better. Now, notice that we have the beginning of the alphabet listed. Now I'm going to click on this speaker and let you hear how they say this. Listen.
Ah, ah, ba, ba, ga, da, da.
That sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's exactly how I said the ancient Hebrew sounds. Ah, ba, ga, da, ha, so forth and so on. Now, I don't want to be misleading. The reason they're pronouncing it this way is because they're using vowel points that produce the ah sound. However, this is actually the proper way to say it. This first letter is equivalent to an A, which gives you ah. This letter is a B. You simply add an A to the end of it and you get ba. This letter is a G. You add an A to the end of it and you get ga. This letter is D. You add an A to the end of it and you get da. So all they did was add an A to each character to get the ah, ba, ga, da. This is actually the correct way to say the ancient Hebrew alphabet. Look at this. This is an article called Proto-Hebrew Had a Single Vowel. The web address is in the top right-hand corner. The word proto means first or original, like prototype. So this article is talking about how proto or original Hebrew had a single vowel. Now they're calling it a vowel. We understand that it's just a sound, but the point is the same. Watch. Let's go down to the third paragraph. Look at the highlighted part. It says, written languages beyond the Egyptian and West Semitic differentiate vowels even in shorthand writing. In other words, when you read most languages, the vowels are included in the writing. It says, to omit the vowels is odd, meaning it would be strange to write a language and leave the vowels out of the text. It says, unless vocalization was unessential or unambiguous. This is the Oxford English Dictionary. The word unambiguous means something that is not open to more than one interpretation. So let's read it again. It says, to omit the vowels is odd unless vocalization was unessential or unambiguous. In other words, the reason why there are no vowels written in the ancient Hebrew text is because the pronunciation of the words was unambiguous, meaning it was clear. It wasn't open to different interpretations.
So the Ashkenazis are working with a Hebrew language that they have derived from their own history. And they have particular scribes who have developed this, I guess, iteration of Hebrew according to what they believe it is. And so they've added all sorts of vowels to it, all kinds of dots and dashes under each letter to imply a vowel. And they've changed a lot of the meaning and sound of the words, and even according to the shape, symbolic shape. Now they adhere to their own scribes, and they also adhere to what the Qumran scribes, how they interpreted translation of Hebrew, but apparently that's not accurate either.
Qumran scribes used their own discretion to alter the text to fit their own dialect. So although the Dead Sea Scrolls was a great discovery, it's still not a reliable source for the ancient pronunciation of Hebrew words. Here's an example of what I mean. Remember earlier I said that the wa, when used as a vowel letter, can produce more than just the U and the O sound? Watch this. This is the same article dealing with the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's focusing on the letter wa and the letter yod. It says, letter A, wa stands for any vowel. It says, there are vowel additions that are meant to help pronunciation and identification of forms that are peculiar to the Qumran scribes. It says, just as the Masoretes invented pointings to indicate vowel sounds, so the Q scribes have added some semi-vowels to the text. The use of yod, wa, and hey are frequent. Watch this. Right here it says, wa is used in a very general way, and a biblical Hebrew reader is used to the O and U sound being attributed to the wa. But the Q scribes, the Qumran scribes, are more general with the use of wa, and they employ it with great frequency to stand for any vowel sound, from Sheva to Kemetz, etc. In other words, the Dead Sea Scrolls uses the wa to sound like O, U, E, A, and E. Now that is not a reliable system. All Hebrew letters started out as symbols. They're called pictographs. Before this letter looked like this, it started out like this. This is the picture of an eye. This is the origin of the Hebrew letter ayin. Now, let's look up the word ayin and see what it means. Here it is. And it means eye. Eye, a physical eye. So the word ayin means eye. That's clear. The letter itself started out as the picture of an eye, and even still today, the word ayin means eye. All the evidence suggests that this letter makes the I sound.
So with that said, my background is that I have studied film, television, and media, film and communication. And as part of that, we studied semiotics, obviously, and mise-en-scene, the construction of what is within a frame. I also studied fine arts, painting, drawing, photography. I've also written for TV, film, advertising agencies, and corporations, but of course that's not my qualification. I'm just letting you know some of my background times. And so this is how I am approaching my reading of the words, but most of all through prayer, and this is based on me on a Sabbath just deciding to look at the Hebrew language. I've wanted to learn Hebrew for a long time, and I want to learn the original Hebrew, because both the 10 tribes of North America of Azareth share Hebrew with, obviously, Judah and Ephraim. These are just my observations. So the first letter, Ah. L usually symbolizes God, but also angels. So all the angels, obviously their names usually end in L, and the word angel ends in L, E-L, right? So, and it's interesting, it looks like the head of a bull, okay? Now, eventually it transitions, so it's called an ox head, obviously, and it's Ah, and it transitions to this symbol, And some people even say the Paleo Hebrew A is the correct original symbol because it's A for Adam, or it looks like a man rather than a bull. And Jews were counseled not to worship the bull as an idol. The bull is always an idol. And then to this one, and finally in the modern Hebrew, to this. Now this is the Hebrew the Ashkenazis have come up with. This is the Paleo Hebrew that the 10 tribes and the original Hebrews, Judah, would recognize more. This is probably closer to Phoenician. It's interesting the transitions that the symbols have gone through throughout time. So I showed you L, and L becomes this symbol. The spiral, which to me signifies it says tent floor plan. And to me, it signifies this Fibonacci sequence and also the shape of the earth. Okay? And so the earth is, God says he sits above the circle of the earth and has stretched it, the heavens out as a tent for us to dwell in. So this kind of fits with flat earth, you know, with the kind of God's eye perspective of the world and then the continents drifting outwards in a spiral. And the sun and moon moving up and down the firmament in a spiral. And you see it's still kind of a spiral here, but it looks like a G, and then it ends up as a Y. So the symbol for the hand of God is this. See, it's a long arm of God, the Y. And the symbols in the word Yahweh are the arm of God, Y, and you see it's the right arm. If it's a person facing you, that's their right arm, and the hand is open to give. So that's the symbol of God, the giver of life, the giver of all things. Okay, and the tent peg is also in the words Yahweh, as well as the man with his arms raised. So the man praising God. So all three of these letters look like a Y, or so Yad, which is the letter for God, is E, Y or E. Yeah. So these are the three symbols for God, all look like Ys. Tent pegs to secure you, praise. So with Bet, Ba having evolved from a spiral into what looks like a right side up Y, the earth has become God. And now when you look over to the modern Hebrew, so this is the Ashkenazi Hebrew, now the Y is upside down. So not only is the earth being worshipped, but now the underworld is also God. This is just kind of a stream of consciousness thing I'm doing as I'm looking at this. Now, after the fall, we got turned upside down. So here is the leg, right? This is Gam, meaning the foot, the third letter, or Ga. And you see, eventually, it's now upside down. So we've been turned upside down. And now, in the late Hebrew here, it is an upside down Y. So it's an upside down God. Dor, the letter Dor, which is an upside down triangle. Okay? Now that is kind of like a vessel, an open vessel pouring light in from heaven, like an hourglass, the top part of an hourglass. Okay? But watch what happens to it in Middle Hebrew. It gets flipped into a triangle. Okay? So it becomes the pyramid shape. And then it becomes a Y in late Hebrew. And it remains a Y in modern Hebrew. So God is the triangle. So, and the triangle is the symbol, is to me, it's not the triune God, it's not the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It's a symbol of Egypt. And so now Egypt has become God and remains God in the Ashkenazi Hebrew. Okay? So next we have Ha, which is the man praising God. And it also looks like a tree. Okay? Tree of life, tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, if you'll note, at Christmas, when you're worshiping Tamu at Christmas, you cut down a tree and you worship, you decorate the tree. You know, it talks about idolatry is to cut down a tree, decorate it in silver and gold, and you worship the idol. So you cut down a tree because a tree is life, right? It has sap in it. Just like we have blood in us, the tree has lifeblood in it. So this starts with the tree, just like a man praising God, okay? The tree and the man praising God. Then it becomes, look, the arms are now turned sideways. You know the saying, and then everything went sideways? It's when it's on its way out. It's gone its way down, above the fall. Now look here. Now it's almost down. So if you look at the symbol for Mercedes-Benz and you look at the sigil magic or the iconography of the darker world of worship, they have that upside down tree, okay, which is a curse. A cursed tree is the tree submitted to the underworld. So now it's fallen, it's almost down. It's like someone doing a cartwheel and they're almost upside down. And then here we go all the way over to the Ashkenazi version of Hebrew, and it's completely upside down, the tree. It's completely submitted to the underworld. Okay? And so all praise is to the underworld. So here is why, again, the tent peg, which secures us. And you know, you can look at Yahshua or Yahweh, and Yahweh has a tent peg in it, and Yahshua, Jesus, Yahshua, also has a tent peg in it, our security, right? So again, it kind of gets twisted, right? It's going down. And it's a hook now. It's a hook. And then here, it just kind of looks like a thorn. There's not much to hold on to there at the top. If you look at the pronunciation, right? It's wah, wah, right? Yahweh. It's the breath of life, Yahweh. Just like when he breathed life into us, Yahweh. Okay? But what does it become in the modern Ashkenazi Hebrew? Vav. Vav. So wah is like giving energy. Wah is giving life. Wah is like wow. Vav is constricting it and strangling it, strangling the vowel between a V and a V. Okay? This is just, I didn't really see anything happening with this. It goes from za to zan to zayin. Next is ha, and it's written here as het, meaning tent wall. So to me, I look at this and I'm like, wow, okay, this looks like a ladder. Like Jacob's ladder to heaven, right? And then it changes here. It looks like the symbol for pi. So it's getting a little bit corrupted here. And it's het, tent wall. And then it's called chet in the Ashkenazi Hebrew. Notice with the Eastern European, there's all these hard consonants introduced that in some cases, or many, tend to close the language. So then we have the basket, ha, which is tet, contain, surround, okay? Now, this is a perfect circle with an X in it, okay? A basket is what Moses was put in, and we were also put in an ark when we were rescued, and you see there's a cross within it, okay? So that's salvation and rescue within a basket. And it's saving the whole world. The four corners of the world are contained in it. Now here, it becomes a 6. And even in the Ashkenazi, it ends up a 6. So the sign of the enemy is going to save the world. The one I find most interesting is Yah, the Yad, okay? Now they call it Yud in Ashkenazi Hebrew. But again, it's the open hand of God. And the hand, and God says, my arm is my arm short? God's arm is described as the long arm of the Lord, the gracious and giving, all providing arm of God. And again, it's the Y, right? For Yahweh. Well, look what happens in Middle Times. It kind of gets shortened. It's like the gimpy arm of God, if there could be such a thing. It's not gimpy, but you see it's getting perverted, the symbol. And look what it becomes. An apostrophe, an accent. Like it's not even like a letter. It's a jot or a tittle. And it says arm and closed hand is the description of it, which is to me a perversion. This can't be right, this description of it. Because look, it's the whole open hand. But perhaps this is how, as sin populates the world, man's view of the hand of God, that it's a closed hand, that it's small and that it's short. And so, but it stays in the Ashkenazi Hebrew as a little tiny insignificant comma. So now, ka is bend, open, allow, tame. Open palm, and it does look like an open palm here, but the palm is open to the sky, open to God. And then it becomes a Y, and then it completely becomes a Y. So that's kind of interesting, but look at what happens when it gets into the Ashkenazi Hebrew. Okay? It goes sideways. It goes sideways. Okay, so it's horizontal now. It's us giving to each other, getting from each other. It's not giving to God. You see? Spiritually, the direction they head in, right? This one's lamb, shepherd, staff. Okay. And look at here, it's the rod and the staff. Here, that's in the middle. Early, it's the rod and the staff. It has a base. Here, it kind of looks like a 6. And then here, it still kind of looks like a staff, but with a hook on the end of it. And eventually, it's a crooked stick. It doesn't even look like a staff here. In this interpretation, it's like a scepter. It's I goad, I control, I rule. So it's almost like the scepter of a king. Okay, water, mem, is symbolic of water. Ma. Okay, now Christ talks about how living waters shall flow. Water is for baptism. We had the flood with Noah. The Israelites passed through the waters of the Red Sea to come into the Promised Land, and then the waters of the river Euphrates to come into the Promised Land. The 10 tribes were delivered to Azareth through the parting of the waters. Moses, of course, was delivered out of death in a basket on waters. So water is flat, it's level, it's vertical, and it's in line with the heavens. Now here it just becomes kind of a distorted shape. And look at, it's symbolic here of chaos, mighty, blood. Okay, and then this is the symbol it becomes. So yeah, so water is always washing, cleansing, ablutions, washing of sins, baptism, rescue, salvation. Okay, so seed looks like a sperm. Here it becomes a Y. Now there it's going to the left. It's going from the right to the left, okay? Here it looks like a Y. So the seed is God, because to me the Y is always symbolizing Yahweh, God. And then here it's just, again, it's a little squiggle, like a worm, and then it ends up like a curled up snake. So the snake is the seed. So sin, thorn, and it says grab, hate, protect. So here it looks like a telephone pole or upside down cross. Wasn't really seeing anything significant in that. But look what it becomes in the Ashkenazi Hebrew. It becomes an upside down triangle, opening to heaven, pointing down to hell. Okay? I just, it's fascinating. What else do we have? Okay, eye is the eye, to watch, to know, shade. Okay, so it went from an eye to a circle without any pupil in it. Okay, circle of the earth maybe, and then it becomes God. So we know that the all-seeing eye is the satanic symbol of God. So here it's already evolved to God. When it gets over to the Ashkenazi Hebrew, it remains Y, God. Even though it's G, G, symbolically, it's God. All-seeing eye. The mouth, Pa. Interesting, it's open this way, and then it's open the other way. Twisted mouth here at the end. It's quite straight here, slightly bent here. Interesting. Trail, saw. Not much changes with it, but again, it looks like upside down Y here, or a chair, or somebody walking. And then it gets completely flipped again to a Y. Journey, chase, hunt. So now it's interesting because Edom is called a hunter. Isaac is blessing Esau. He's given all of his blessing to Jacob, so he only has very little left to give to Esau, who just demands a blessing. So he says that you'll be a hunter. And he already is a hunter, but he'll live by the sword. And so now in the Ashkenazi Hebrew, it's almost a Y-like shape. You see the things that, so Esau has become God. It's an upside down symbol. So now, Qua, sun on the horizon. Okay, so not much happens with it. In the middle here, though, it kind of looks like an eye, and then it almost becomes a Y-like shape again. And then finally in the Ashkenazi Hebrew, it looks more like a Q or a P, but still it's kind of got a Y-like shape. And of course, you know, the symbol of the sun god, Ra, is a satanic symbol. So interesting. I love this one, Resh, Ra in ancient Hebrew, which is kind of a curious one I'm not really buying, because Ra is the sun god. You know, the first god that they worshipped in Egypt. So not so sure about that one. Ra, which is first, top, beginning, head of man. Okay? And it looks like a fist. Now, you know, with Esau and Jacob is the beginning of the world, and Esau, the foot, is the end. So Jacob is the head. So it looks like somebody's hair with a head and a big nose kind of thing. But it also looks like a fist. It looks like a hand. So the hand is the symbol of the head, because we know when we look at the symbol for Yahweh, it's the right hand, right? It's the long arm of God, and it's the right hand of God. Okay? And this looks like a right hand, a right-handed fist as well, the head. And so here it becomes, I don't know, kind of, it doesn't really look like much here. It could look like an arm and a fist here. And now it kind of looks like a little tiny Y maybe. And then it remains that. It's not very significant. It's not a fist. It's not a head. It just kind of looks like a little squiggle. But now when you compare it to the foot, okay, now Esau was the foot. Esau was the end of the world, right? And so it evolves to the upside down man, the upside down Y, upside down God, and then it kind of remains so in the Ashkenazi Hebrew letters. Okay, what are some other interesting ones? Shah, two front teeth. It's funny because in Jamaica they say cha or pshat. Pshat means Passover. Cha means sin. And they suck their two front teeth and then they go cha. So that's kind of an interesting, funny one because it's all about sin, and that's Jamaican patois. And both cha and pshat are Hebrew for the exact words, sin and Passover. And then eventually it looks like a fire over in the Ashkenazi. Now the cross is a symbol of a tree as well, right? Because Jesus hung on a cross. Whoever hangs on a cross or hangs on a tree is cursed. So what happens to the cross over time? Again, it goes sideways. Ta is the name of this letter. T, ta. Mark, sign, signal, monument. Interesting. So we know that if you ever look at this video on no trees on flat earth, they were all cut down. Most of the buildings, like the superstructure buildings, are made out of rock, and rock comes from fallen trees. The most gigantic ones actually turn into rock, not just petrified wood, but if they're so gigantic, they become rock, and a lot of our monuments are made out of it. And it's a sign and a signal, and it's a mark. You know, you get the mark of the beast, but God also marks us. So it's the tree, now it's the fallen cross, now it's the submitted tree. It's the tree turned sideways with the Ashkenazis. Now notice the last symbol, Ga, is a symbol of a rope. Twisted, dark, wicked is what it's called, Ga. Interesting, but what does it look like? It looks like a DNA strand. Or embedded in it is the H, the sign of eternity. And it's only in the ancient Hebrew. It's like a DNA strand. Or two serpents, like the medical symbol, or like the two serpents on the breast of Beaufort. This is our very code, the very building blocks of life. And it's only in the ancient Hebrew, not even paleo Hebrew. And ancient Hebrew is supposed to be the original unconfounded language, because Eber, in the Old Testament, the grandfather of Abraham, spoke Hebrew. And the line of Abraham is the one of the 70 tribes that came out of the three sons, the three nations of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Hebrew was the one language that was not confounded. It was the original language. And so, because the word is power, and by life and death is in the power of the tongue, so it holds the code for life, DNA. And what happens when it gets to the Ashkenazi and every other language, every other version of Hebrew? It's gone. Here is some info on the Ayin and Gayan. So it says, while modern Hebrew consists of 22 letters, the evidence suggests that there are additional letters in the original Semitic and Hebrew alphabet. One of the ancient Semitic languages of Canaan was Ugarit, and this language is almost identical to Hebrew, the Hebrew of the Bible letters. So instead of 22 letters, it has 28 letters. And one of the major differences between the Ugarit and the Hebrew is an additional letter, Gaian, which does not exist in Hebrew. Evidence such as this will be presented here to suggest that Gaian did originally exist in the Hebrew text of the Bible. But later it was written as Ayin, the modern Hebrew. So the I replaced the helix type symbol. So below are a few examples of Hebrew words that are spelled with ayin that have more than one meaning. Infant, wicked, prophet, goat, heed, answer, weary, darkness, skin, blind, and so on. While one word with two meanings may not seem strange to us, as the English language is filled with words with more than one meaning, it is a very rare occurrence in Hebrew, and when it does occur, it suggests that there were originally two different words. In fact, the letter ayin represents two ancient letters. How can we determine which letter was originally used in a given word? For example, was ayin the Hebrew word? I can't really read that word. Originally spelled with an ayin or a gaian? When we compare the meanings of words on the table above, you'll notice the words in the far right column are related to darkness and wickedness. So like storm, clouds, rain, blind, and wickedness, wicked, goat, city, bad, crafty, as the Hebrew word, I think it's, and I can't spell it here, means storm, which is the idea of darkness. We can conclude that it was originally spelled with a gaian. Below are a few other words that were most likely originally written with a gaian. Perverse, crooked, goat, crooked, various forms of crooked. So here's the modern Hebrew, the Greek, and the English. Modern Hebrew is Amora. In Greek, it's Gamoras. English, it's Gomorrah. So that's interesting. In modern Hebrew, it's love, but in these ones, it's lust for Sodom and Gomorrah. Only Hebrew is missing the Gaian. Arabic and other modern Semitic language has managed to retain both the ayin and the gaian as separate. Interesting. I wonder if it's a warning to us, and that's why they got rid of it, because it's the DNA strand. And once this DNA strand is introduced, the mutation, we can't never go back, people. Me say you can't go back. You take the mark of the beast and you plug in to your eye. That's why they say eye. Plug into your third eye. And then you can't go back once you take the mark of the beast in your DNA. See this? So don't take the mark. Don't take it. Don't take no tattoo, no kind of markings on your body. Oh, this one's really obvious. The Hebrew word I with the head means friend, but the DNA strand with the head means bad. It's like really obvious. It's a warning. Interesting. All who are weary. Oh, who are we? So this to me was just an interesting journey that I took today that I wanted to share with people about the symbolism and the transition from purity to impurity that the Hebrew language has taken from ancient Hebrew to now the Ashkenazi Hebrew. Now, the Ashkenazis are the descendants of Japheth and Gog or Magog. And so you see they can't interpret the language properly. They put all these harsh consonants in it and they constrict it. And the Bible talks about when God redeems Israel, they will be people of a pure speech. And I think the pure speech implies not only returning to this pure language on a certain level, but also pure speech. You know, when one of the prophets says, see, let your speech be always gracious, seasoned with salt. Zephaniah 3:9. At the end of the confusion of Babel, he says, at that time I will change the speech of the peoples to a pure speech, that all of them may call on the name of the Lord and serve him in one accord. The meaning of the name of Jesus. Now, when you read Hebrew, you read it this way. So you read it right to left. You always start on the right. God's arm is the right hand of God. So we shouldn't be reading left to right. We should be reading right to left. That's the original way to go. And even in this version of it, of the word Yeshua, now I'm moving away from Jesus because, you know, this is how I'm being convicted. Everybody has their own journey. So it's Yeshua, okay? Yeshua. So it starts with the hand of God, and then it says man with raised arms, tent peg, man with raised arms, two front teeth, so sharply, tent peg, and then I. So the translation here they've got is he exists and exists. So he's eternal is their interpretation. And sharply secures and watches and shades. So here then see the tiny symbol for Yah. So the right hand and giving hand of the all-creating God, the all-powerful creator God. And then he is the right hand of God that gives and creates and provides. He praises God. He worships God. He is our security. So the tent peg is for security. It's not just and. And his security is a worship of God. And the two front teeth, shua, sharply, so distinctly, clearly, secures, watches over us, and shades us from death and the darkness of sin. So I just think, so this is the name of Yeshua, our Savior, Mashiach, our Messiah. So here is some other lists that I found. So these aren't quite as ancient symbols. So you can see the fist is still there. So it's interesting, the tet is the basket the snake surrounds. So it's like the earth, the circle of the earth, and the four corners of the earth surrounded by a snake, like the flat earth or the Southern Cross, which is more associated with the Illuminati and the Catholics and everything. But it is also the basket of salvation that separates us from the world, that separates us from the enemy. So it's interesting symbolism. And then we have this one. So this is contrasting some of the major symbols. So again, you have the bull. And so the bull in English, interestingly enough, is the A, which is a triangle. So the triangle, again, is a satanic symbol. In modern Hebrew, it's an X. It almost looks like an X. It's still the bull. But an X is kind of a curse, right? And then the sound is ah. And then the hands praising God. And then Paleo Hebrew, it says Ancient Hebrew. Paleo Hebrew, they're defining it a bit differently in this list. So then it's in Paleo Hebrew, it's gone sideways. In Ancient Hebrew, it's proper praising God. In English, it's an E. So it's gone sideways as well. And then modern Hebrew, it's completely upside down. So even the difference between the English, now English is derived, a language coming from the seed of Japheth, from the northern tribes, and from the angels, actually. When you get to the Ashkenazi Hebrew, it's upside down. Again, God is insignificant, short, small hand, not even open, and defined as closed hand. It's an eye, at least it's pointing upwards in English, and it's a circle without a dot in it. It's a circle for an I in English, the O, and then the Y for tent peg, I think it is, yeah. For the tent peg, becomes kind of a crooked cross here in Paleo Hebrew. That's kind of interesting. And then it's a U in English, which is kind of interesting. And then it's still a tent peg in Ashkenazi Hebrew. Anyway, guys, I hope you found that interesting. And I'm just going to say praise Yahweh, and Yeshua, and Shalom. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching.